Hello and welcome to our tutorial. So we're just going to have a look at a couple of very simple things in this. We're just going to look at countdown timer and basic scoring. So I'm just going to make a new project and we'll call this FPS. And I'll put up my desktop and hit create. And so I'm not going to add on to the previous tutorial. I'm just going to create a new one. And we can work on some of these basic elements that you may or may not need in your particular game. So the first thing we're going to look at is a countdown timer and how to display that in the game. So in the last tutorial we looked at putting up like a health bar. So we made a UI like a canvas and we put some information on it. So I'm going to look at doing that again. Only this time we'll put in a clock and have a countdown, and when the clock counts to gets to 0, we can change level, or have a you lose screen, or go back to our main menu, or whatever you desire. And then the other thing that we'll look at is getting a score. So in the next tutorial we'll look at shooting, and so in this one we're just going to look at doing a pickup, and from that pickup getting changing again a UI element that'll be a numerical display, so your score will go from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40, etc. So this is Unity version, I think it's 2019.3. Yeah, so this is kind of the latest version. So there's a couple of things in this that are interesting. So historically I would use the standard assets to get in a controller to set up a character, but you can't do that anymore. So I might show you how to set up a character not using the standard assets. So let's have a little look at that. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create a ground plane, and there it is. It's at 0, 0, 0, and we'll call it ground. Okay, and then we're going to create an empty, and this is going to be our player, so we'll call this player character. So on this I need a not an event system, I need a character controller. So this kind of gives it basic size and gives it physics. So I need 2 scripts really to get this going, but first of all I need to get my camera in here. So I'm going to put my camera inside of this, and then I'm going to reset the camera at 0, 0, 0. So there's my camera, there's my player character. And then I'm just going to import 2 scripts that I've written. They're in my scripts folder. So what am I going to bring in? No, they're not in there. They're in here. Assets and scripts. So I want my mouse look and my player movement. So these 2 scripts are, and I'll just create a scripts folder here. I will share these with you. They're just simple. They're simple enough scripts. So we'll put them in here for now. Maybe can we do that? We can. No, we can't. There we go. So the first one is a mouse look script. So this is it here. I'm going to drag and drop that onto the camera. So now when I press play, I can kind of look up and down. I can't look left or right. We'll see why that is in a minute. So this is my mouse look script. This is because I haven't set the player body, so it doesn't know what's moving. So I need to give it this. Here is the player body. But the player body doesn't have any movement on it. Like it has size, and it has some kind of attributes like what sort of slope it can go up, but it can't actually move backwards and forwards. So that's what this script is for. So this is asking me where is the character controller. So this is the character controller. And I've got a speed of 12. Gravity is pulling me down by minus 9.8. We'll get the ground check in a minute, and ground mask. So the way this works is I'm going to create another empty, and I'm going to call this ground check. And this should basically, we'll set this at 0, 0, 0. So there it is there. That should be beneath my player character. So what we'll do is, just so we can see where this player character is at, we're going to create just some sort of visualization. So I'm going to create a cylinder. And again, I'm going to zero that out. So 0, 0, 0. And I'm going to move this cylinder up. Now it has a capsule collider, so we don't need that. So we just have, like I said, this is just a visual. And I'm going to go to my player here. And we can see that the player is slightly inset in here. I'm going to see if I can change to wireframe here. So we can see that there's a gap here between the actual player and the cylinder mesh. So we'll look in from the side in orthographic mode. So they look kind of lined up now. And now I'm going to go to this ground check empty here, and I'm going to place this at the bottom of the cylinder. And I'm also going to put it inside the player character. So this is part of this character setup. So what is that for? So I'm going to put my ground check in there. So the ground check is checking to see, am I touching the ground? And if I am, I can jump. And if I'm not touching the ground, I can't jump. So that's pretty much it. But it works on the premise that we have a layer called ground. So I'm going to select my cylinder here. This is my, we'll call this body or something. We'll put this into the player character as well. And this ground here that I have, so I need to get, so I'm not going to tag it, I'm going to put it on a layer. And the layer, I don't have a layer called ground, so I'm going to make one. But before I do that, I just want to check the spelling of ground. So where's my player movement script here? So let's just double click this and open it in Visual Studio. So it's looking for a ground, so a layer to go, am I on this layer? And if it is on that layer, then it will, adhere to that layer. So so you can see here it says is grounded. So it's casting a sphere, and it's checking its position, the distance that we've set here, so how big the sphere will be, and then the ground mask. And up here it's saying layer mask, ground mask. So it's looking for this layer mask here. So what we need to do in Unity is we're going to take the ground here, and we're going to create a new layer. So in number 8 here, I'm going to type in ground. Okay, and then I'm going to take this one here, and I'm going to put it onto the layer ground. And then what am I checking for here? I'm checking for ground. So the ground has that layer, and this is checking, am I touching that layer? So let's just see if all of these things work. So I'm going to press play, and I should be able to spin around and look up and look down. I should be able to move forward, and forward being the direction the mouse is looking in. I should be able to press spacebar to jump, and I come back down under the weight of gravity. So that's a basic character controller. And as I said, I'll pass these two scripts on to you. They're just using horizontal and vertical input for movement, which is WASD, and then the mouse look script is using the mouse X and mouse Y axis. So they're kind of generic input sections. So you've got in input manager here, you've got a whole bunch of stuff about what is input, what is horizontal, and what is vertical. Okay, so let's move on to the main event for what we're looking at. So we're looking at sort of a countdown timer, and we're looking at trying to score. So I'm just going to take my ground here and just scale it up a little bit so I can walk around a little bit more. And what I want to do is I want to create a UI. So I'm going to create a UI. So I'm going to create a canvas. And as before, it's very big, and everything we put on this will always be overlaid on top of what the camera sees. As we did before, I'm going to change it from being constant pixel size to scale with the screen. And then I need to put in the resolution that we intend to work with, which is, in this case, is HD. It's 1920 by 1080. And that's all we need to do with the canvas. And I'm going to call this Player UI. And I need to spell that correctly. Player UI. And then on that, I'm going to put a countdown timer. So I'm going to go back down to my UI here, and I'm going to put in... what will we do? So if I put in text, so I can put in text here, and there it is, and it's very small and it has no background. So maybe we'll do that, and then we'll work through how to put something behind it. Okay, so what are we looking for? So let's position this first of all. So I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to put my clock up in the top kind of right hand corner. So on my UI here, I'm also going to put in an image, and that image I'm also going to put up in this corner up here, and we'll worry about where it's at in a minute. So so just so you can see, so if I move this backwards and forwards on the Z axis, it doesn't make any difference to it, because it's all superimposed on this canvas. So if I move the image above the text, you can see that the text, being the lower object, is on top. So if I were to, if I had 4 or 5 objects, if I wanted to set the order that they're in, then the order they're in here as children will determine which one's on top. So just to be aware of that. So here is my image. So let's just give it a width of, I don't know, well, it's a nice square there, so we'll just leave it as a square. So we'll take our text, we'll move the text into the center, and we'll center it up a bit, and we'll make our text bigger. Now, as before, if the text gets much bigger than the box it's in, then we can't see it. So this image is 100 by 100, so let's make the text box 100 by 100. So it's, you know, approximately, it's the same size as what's above it. So there's my text, and I get to then tell the text to be centered that way and centered that way. And so we can see we have text. Now I was going to put in a number, say 10, for 10 seconds, and then see how big I can make this on the screen. Now obviously if I wanted to put in 100 seconds, I'd make the box bigger because I'd have an extra number. So let's say we want to count down from 10. So how do we count down from 10? How do we get that to work? And the simple answer is we need a little script to make it work. So before I do that, the script I'm going to need to use, or script I'm going to use, it doesn't have to go on the canvas or on the image or on the text. Like, it doesn't matter the script where it goes. So there'll be quite a number of objects like that in your game. Like, for example, say you have a backing track for music. You know, it's different if you have a piece of audio in the game and you want to hear something from a particular location. But if you have just music in the background, it doesn't really matter what that music is on in terms of what object you associated with. So normally what we do is we create an object at 0, 0, 0 and empty, and we call that level control. So this is level 1. So I'll call it level 1 controller, and that's where I'm going to put my script. So if I come back to this game in 6 months time or 6 years time and I go, where is that script? My convention, what I do is I'll put it here. So let's make a script. So over here under scripts, we'll right click and go create C# script, and we'll call it count down timer. Then we'll double click it and load it up here. So the first thing we need to put in is we need to load a library. So we need to tell it that we want to use the UI. We did this before. So I'm going to say using Unity engine.ui. So if I don't put that in, I won't be able to reference to items in the UI. I won't be able to like manipulate images, or in this instance, the text. That's what we want to get at. So, so let's move that there, and we will say. So the next thing we want to do is load in another library, actually, because when the clock ticks down, we want to load in our scene manager so we can change scenes. So again, Unity engine dot scene management. Okay. So again, without that, we can't swap scenes. Now I don't have a second scene in there at the moment, but we can make one in a minute, and we'll get it working now. And then after that, we need to put in some variables at the start. So the first one I want, and they all have to be public so I can see them in the inspector. So I want a public float, and a float is like a decimal, and we'll call this time left. So this is how much we're going to count down for. Now in Unity at the moment we put in 10, but we could put in any value here if we wanted. So, but I'll stick with what we have there, and we can always change it in the inspector. So 10 seconds. So we're going to say that's how much time we have left. And then the other thing we have to identify, we want to change, we want to like count down here, and we want to be able to change the text. So we need to put in a variable that is the text. So again, it has to be public so we can change it in the inspector. And it's a text field that we want to change, and then we can call it anything that we want. We'll just call this, I don't know, timer. Yeah, we'll call it timer, and that's it. So that's where we'll put in our text. So after that, it's fairly straightforward. I don't need to put anything in at the start of the script. I definitely don't need that line there. So all we need to do is in void update, we need to tell it how to figure out the time, how to count down. So what we'll do is we'll say time left minus equals. So that means is subtracting from it is time. So we want to subtract time, and time is time dot delta time. So that's how you subtract like your game time. So when the game starts, this image or this number here starts counting up. So if the game is 10 seconds long, this will be 10. If it's 50 seconds long, it'll be 50. So it counts up. So this is time left. So we have 10 seconds. And then this is, as this counts up, 1, 2, 3, this is going to count down 9, 8, 7. So it's minus equals. So it's removing one from the other. So that's the first thing. So now we have our, that is basically our countdown clock. So what we want to do is we want to say, we want to put that now into our text field here. And we do that by saying that the timer dot text equals. Now what does it equal? Well, we wanted to display this number here, so we need to put that in. So we need to go time left, but time left is a number. We don't want it to be a number. We want to say it's toString. When I say toString, it means it's changing it into an alphanumeric value. So it's changing it into letters. And then in here, I'm going to do that. Now, if I don't do that, this is a decimal. So we need to tell it how many decimal places to display for. So if we were to display for 10 decimal places or 15 decimal places, which it would do for us, we could change this here to say 0.00, and it will display that number of places. So we're just going to get basically integers, a solid number, so 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. So this here takes the time left, converts it to an alphanumeric value, but doesn't let it have a huge number of decimals after it, and then it's going to put it into a text field as an alphanumeric value. So let's just, this isn't complete yet. We haven't done the scene management part of it, but let's just see if we can get that to work. So let's jump back into Unity. So I'm going to take this countdown timer and place it on my level controller. So there it is there. And it's saying, what text do we want? And we'll have a quick look here at our text for a second. So there's two things here. It says text twice. So text with a capital T is a reference to this panel. And it's quite a lot in this panel. So I could refer to this text, so text with a capital T dot font. And I could change the font size, a whole bunch of things. Text with a small t refers to this field here. So if I type in Schniffinje, we can only see the first two letters of it. That text is not important because we're going to replace it with the text here. We're going to say, put in this number. So I'm going to take this text field here and drag it in there. And that's telling the script, no matter what text is written here, replace that text with this number and then count down. So I'm going to press play, and hopefully what we'll see is 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and then as I turn around, because it's a UI, it's stuck in front of the camera. Okay, so that works, and it's quite simple. So now what do we do next? So where are we? We are, oh, I have two instances of Visual Studio open. Here we are. So we need to have a consequence now to our level. Actually, so let's just jump back in here to Unity for a second and set this up. Where is it? There it is. So this level is called sample scene, so that's no good. So let's go save, and then we'll go save as. So we'll give it a proper name. And here's my scenes folder. I'm going to call it I know, level 1, because I'm very original. So we've got our sample. We don't need this sample scene here. We can delete that now because level 1 is what we're working with. I need another scene. So I'm just going to make sure this is saved. It's going to save it and then go File, New Scene, and we'll call this, I don't know, Main Menu, even though there's nothing in it. Okay, so Main Menu. So I have two scenes. I have level 1 and I have Main Menu. So let's go back to level 1. Now, when I'm in my script here, what I'm going to say is, if time left, that one there, if time left is smaller than 0. So if I've reached 0, then I want to do something. And what's the thing I want to do? Well, I want to go scene manager dot load scene, and then I need to tell it what scene I want to load, and I've just made one there called main menu, and that's it. So we're going to go, we've got 10 seconds minus time from our 10 seconds, then replace the text in the text field with the time left. Make sure it's an alphanumeric value and it's only an integer, so it's not showing me decimal places. And then if time left is smaller than 0, change scene. So let's save that and jump back into Unity. Now if I play this now, I might as well do this actually, get rid of this, loads of compile errors. I'm going to press play here and you'll see it not work, and it'll come up with an error message, a build message. So in order for this to work, in order to change scenes in Unity, there's a build manager which has all the scenes in it. So I'm just going to hit escape here and stop it. So it's saying to me here, main menu couldn't be loaded because it hasn't been added to the build settings. So let's go do that. So we'll go File, Build Settings, and it's in Scenes in the Build. So we'll add our current scene, level 1, but we also need to drag and drop main menu in. So if the scene isn't listed here, we can't access it. So now let's try it again. Only this time, rather than having to wait 10 seconds, let's just count down from 3 seconds, because this is the field that changes the text in here. So we'll press play. So we'll go 3, 2, 1, 0, and then we've changed scene. So there's nothing in the scene. We're in the main menu. Okay, so that's that. So let's just save our game, and let's clear this particular compiler error, and let's zoom out. So I'm going to go to my UI, and I'm going to change this to timer BG, and then I'm going to take this text field here, and I'm going to call this timer. And I'm going to take both of them, and I'm going to duplicate them. And I'm going to move them over to the other side of my screen. And instead of this being timer BG, I'm going to call it score BG, so score background, and I'm going to call this score. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to kind of replicate what we did in the previous kind of level that we created. So if you remember, we had a script that made a health bar. So I'm just going to hit save here. So we'll import that script. So import new asset. And on my desktop, I have my scripts here. So we had health control. We had this script here. So let's import that one. And we'll just have a little chat about this script. So, oh yeah, so no, this was the one that deleted the object. So we had a health symbol on the ground, and it when you collided with it, it made that object disappear. So we'll do something similar here. We'll put in an object in the ground, and when we bump into it, we'll increase our score. So we had, what else did we have? Let's import another script. So we had and we had our player control script. So that's just, like, we're not going to use this script, but let's have a look in it and see how it worked. So we had a slider value, and we had a health value. So basically, we said when we collide with the object that has the tag mine, -1 from our health, and then we changed the value of the slider. So that was the technique that we used. So let's see if we can, in our player movement script here, let's see if we can add in something similar. So we said, well, let's just copy all of this across, and then we can delete the bits that we don't want. So I'm going to go Control-C, go over to player movement, Control-V. So we're going to say, so on trigger enter, collide or other. So if we collide with a game object with the tag mine, so let's call this, let's say it has we'll call it gold. So we collide with something that says gold. Then we need to do something. So we don't need this one. We don't need that one. But what we do need is a score. So let's add in a variable. We'll call this one, so it's a public, and we'll keep it as an integer, so it's only a whole number, and we'll call it score. Okay. So we'll say when we bump into this object, if it's got the tag gold, we'll say, so we could say score plus plus, so that means add 1 to the score. Or we could say score equals score plus 5. Okay. Now let's give it a starting value, this score. So let's say equals 0. So we start with nothing. Okay. So that's our that's going to be our we're going to get 5 every time we knock into something that has gold on it, or has the tag gold. But like over here in our countdown timer, we need a text field. So I'm going to press Control-C, go back over here and put this in. So I'm going to say public text, and then instead of calling it timer, I'm going to call it score text. Now, it's giving me a red line here, and that's because I haven't told it we're using the Unity UI system. So let's do that. So let's say using Unity Engine.UI, and that way I can use things like text. And then down here, we want to do the same thing. So this is called score text. So we want to say score text dot text, because it's the small text field that we want to change, and we want to tell it that that is equal to our score. And then if you remember, we said toString. Only this time we don't need to put in, where is it, this number here to tell us how many decimal places that we need, but we do need to put these brackets in here, otherwise it won't work. Okay, so let's go File and Save, and let's jump back into Unity, and we're going to create an object. So let's create a coin. So we'll go 3D object, cylinder, and we'll put it at 0, 0, 0, and we'll double click on it, and we'll call this coin. Okay, and we will make it smaller here, and where will we move it? We'll move it over there, and we'll rotate it up a little bit. So there's my coin. Now I could make it gold and all sorts of other things, but let's just, for simplicity, put it there. Now it has a collider on it, but I need to say is trigger. Right, and then the script that we were using, actually I can delete this now, we don't need that. We were just stealing code from it. So the script that we had here, whoops, the health control, that deletes an object when it's hit with the object player. So let's put that on our coin so it disappears after we hit it, so we can't infinitely get lots of score. And then that requires us then to, the player character here, to tag it player. So it knows when I get hit with something with the tag player, disappear. And then finally, on our player here, we have our player script. Player script. And we need to tell it what text field to increase when, to show what our score is. So that was this text field here, we called it score. So let's press play, and what we should get is a clock timing counting down, and what we should have got there, I only gave myself 3 seconds, so let's go change that. Let's change this here. Let's give ourselves 20 seconds so we don't run out of time. And then in my player character here, I've got my score.text. Here we go. Okay. So, let's see. So this should, if I have this correct, let me jump back in here. Okay, so what we've done here, the reason the score didn't change initially was because we didn't set it in update. So what we said is when I collide with the object, then change the score. And until then, there is no score. So I'm going to have to kind of cheat a little bit. So I'm going to have to go into my score here, and I'm going to give it a value of 0. Now, so we press play. So it has to have an initial value. And then when I go over here, when I bump into it, I should have gotten a score of 5. So why am I not doing that? Why is that not working? So this has my player movement on it, and I've got my player, and what am I not doing correctly? Let me figure that out. So let's press play again, and we'll see it work. And there we go, 5. And the reason it didn't work was because I hadn't tagged it gold. So in our script, which is here, we had said, when I collide with the trigger, only if it has the tag gold, add +5 to the score and +5 to the text field. And what I hadn't done was I hadn't created this tag. So I went add tag, I hit plus here, I typed in gold and hit save. Then I had created a tag called gold, and then I selected it from the pull down menu here. So then I can, I can duplicate my coin here, as if we were playing Sonic the Hedgehog, and off I go, and I can press play. And here I am, where are we? And I go, so 5, 10, 15. And you can see my clock is counting down on the right hand side. So that's it. So conceptually not terribly difficult. So we should change level here from my 20 seconds. There we go. So a countdown clock and a score. So in the last tutorial I said we did a sort of a green health bar. So this is graphically really basic, I know, but it's easy to change the image that's in this background here, or change your font, make it all more beautiful. But this, in terms of a tutorial, is just about functionality. So I will see you tomorrow. We will discuss this, and I will give you these scripts, and we'll walk our way through them if you need any help with them. And I will talk to you then.